This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, I'd like to officially call this Planning Commission meeting of January 24th, 2023, Sebastopol Planning Commission to order. Start with the reading of the Zoom meeting protocols, I guess. This meeting is being conducted utilizing teleconferencing and electronic means consistent with the state of California's executive orders regarding COVID-19 pandemic. YouTube and Zoom are being utilized for this meeting. In case of technical issues, meetings will be uploaded to the city website as soon as possible after this meeting. We will be conducting today's meeting in a virtual setting using Zoom, and staff are participating from remote locations practicing appropriate social distancing. Members of the public may view and listen to the meeting by use of Zoom as noted in the city's website and as noted in the agenda. Members of the public wishing to speak to City Council, Planning Commission may do so during public comment or make comment on agenda items during the discussions of each item. It must be logged in. Anyone using abusive, vulgar, offensive, threatening, or harassing language, personal attacks of any kind, or offensive terms that target specific individuals or groups will be muted and removed from the meeting. Please do not abuse this new way to provide public comment. Thank you. Okay, so let's go with start with roll call.
Thank you. We'll start with Commissioner Kelly.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Ottinger.
Here.
Commissioner Burns.
Here.
Vice Chair Fritz.
Here.
And Chair Fernandez.
Here.
We have a full member load tonight. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you to the commissioners for being here at the meeting. Item number 2, comments from the public on items not on the agenda. So this is an opportunity for public commenting on items that are not on tonight's agenda. If you wish to make a comment on something on the agenda, you will be given an opportunity down the road. So if you do wish to have comments, tell them what to do.
Sure. So you can, I think most people at this point know how to raise your hand virtually, but you can also raise your hand physically or let me know in the chat. And while I'm looking around at the gallery, I did not receive any comments from items not on the agenda. John, did you receive any?
No, I did not.
Thank you. And I do not see any members of the public wishing to comment.
Okay. Then we'll go ahead and close that comment section. And next item number 3, statement of conflicts of interest from any of the commissioners. Anyone have any statement of conflicts of interest on today's agenda? Okay. Seeing none, moving on to item number 4, approval of minutes of August 9th, 2022. Anybody have any changes, additions for the items? Yes, Kushandra.
I'm not seeing any hands going up with changes, so I move that we approve the minutes of August 9th, 2022.
Okay. And can I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. We have motion and a second. Carrie, go ahead and.
Thank you. Commissioner Ottinger.
Yes.
Commissioner Burns.
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly.
Yes.
Vice Chair Fritz.
I will abstain since I was not here. There.
Thank you. Chair Fernandez.
Aye.
Okay, the minutes are approved.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on.
And thank you for your patience with those. I realized we had some stuff that we had to reorder as a department, so I appreciate your patience.
Well, obviously you did a good job because nobody had any changes. Item 5A, zoning code interpretation for an alcohol use permit. And John or you or Carrie going to making the presentation? Sure.
So I will give this staff report. So this is an item that could use some clarification. We have 2 types of alcohol use permits, two general classifications. One is a on sale, which I think of as on-site, and off-sale, which is for consumption off-site. Our alcohol use permit ordinance does require a use permit for any alcohol use within the city. However, it allows the planning director or designee to permit alcohol use permits for bona fide restaurants. For the bona fide restaurants means that they're getting the ABC permit for a restaurant. But in terms of what the city requires, as outlined on page 2 of this report, it's basically that it be a full kitchen, serve meals, and we at a staff level we can approve for up to 50-person capacity. Beyond that, it still needs to come to the planning commission. Likewise, if there's a number of triggers that where if they want to do certain things, it would need to come to the planning commission for review. Any bars or other permits, and I believe this commission has actually recently reviewed a couple of off-sale only licenses, do need to come to the planning commission. We do not have the staff authority to do that. As such, when we do issue licenses for permits, we do include as conditions of approval, all of the items 1 through 9 that are included on page 2 of that memo staff report. The clarification comes with the kind of the shift that happened during COVID, which is the state and the ABC changed their regulations. Now we certainly have and I want to be clear that we have our own regulations as a city. But one of the things that happened during COVID, as most of you are aware, restaurants were not allowed to open, and then they were only allowed to open outdoor areas. So they were pretty restrictive. And to support small businesses, a lot of the state and legislator did allow, and the ABC did allow for some flexibility in the to-go of alcoholic beverages. And so what has happened over time is there has been a like how that relates to our local license, I feel could use some clarity. We have a couple of permits later that are handled separately from this item, that are requesting to do retail sales as a standalone component, but within their restaurant for the same business, which is off sale. Additionally, there's clarification needed for the alcohol use permits that we are issuing as a staff level. Particularly, we do require that the conditions that any takeout service is incidental and does not include sale or dispensing or consideration of alcoholic beer, wine, or other beverages, and that no alcoholic beer or wine or beverages sold is consumed beyond the premises. The interpretation that I'm referring to the Planning Commission in terms of how we regulate, whether it would need to come to the Planning Commission or whether it is okay to do under our current operation, is the sale of alcohol that sort of commenced during COVID, which is if someone is getting takeout as a meal and they want to get a takeout adult beverage to go with that, at the same time they're purchasing that meal, is that allowed under this criteria for restaurants? Additionally, for years there's certainly been the practice of someone orders a bottle of wine at a restaurant, they don't consume all of it, rather than having them consume it all on premises to not waste what they purchased. It's pretty standard practice in the restaurant industry to put the cork back in the bottle, wrap it, and package it for to go to take home, rather than have people overconsume alcohol on site. And then additionally, one of the other things that was raised was, what about if someone has a meal, they have a glass of wine, and they want to buy a bottle of that wine that they can't get at a store, or they want to buy it to support the restaurant to take that home? Is that something that, in this interpretation, is consistent with the use and practices of a restaurant. Again, some of this has changed during COVID. And so we do want to have a clear practice that we can provide guidance to everybody in town. The interpretation that I am proposing is that those three components, as long as it's associated with a meal, essentially that it is part of a kind of normal restaurant operations. However, if it is sort of the fourth potential practice is the sale of alcohol as, say, a bottle shop or just as a retail sale, separate from consuming a meal or any sort of interaction of consuming either a glass of wine at the restaurant or getting a meal takeout. So if it's simply retail, the same way you'd go into Safeway or some other bottle bar in some other store, that is not consistent with sort of the normal operations of a restaurant and would require that higher level of review by the Planning Commission. And so this is before you tonight to take some public comment and then determine whether or not you concur with the interpretation or whether or not you want to modify it in whole or part so that we can have clarity in terms of how we're processing applications. I will note there are a number of restaurants who, certainly took advantage during COVID of the ability to do the to-go beverages. The ABC does require that we allow it on the local level, not that it just be allowed by the ABC. So, we both have regulations. Whatever the most stringent is what would apply to any outlet with that particular license or practice. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions. And
thank you for that. Any questions of staff? Yeah, go ahead, Kathy.
Yes, I was looking at number 4, separate purchase aside from a meal. I'm thinking about it in terms of, am I going into a pizza parlor and not purchasing a meal, but purchasing 2 balls of dough to take home and cook? The fact that would be okay because it's not alcohol makes me think that your concern with number 4 is because of the issues of alcohol sales being sold to minors, sold near a school, the littering and loitering issue, the proliferation of those concerns in the same area. Are there other concerns that you have about item 4 that make you want to defer that to the Planning Commission?
I think, there certainly is I think that more or less covers it. I think there's, there is a balance of, for instance, the takeout, any takeout service is only incidental to the primary sit-down use. It's, for a pizza parlor, it's kind of the same thing, although they could, usually you can do retail wherever you can do a restaurant in town. Is the traffic, is the monitoring of that incidental versus now you have a high turnover or multiple uses in the single place. But certainly the ABC has, in terms of just a regular retail sales of alcohol, is a separate permit, like a Safeway or something like that. And John, I believe in our discussions, they are concerned about some of the number of outlets for things like that.
Yeah, a couple of the type, the retail ones that were expressed to us were type 20 and type 21. And I know ABC is looking at the amount of permits that are within Sonoma County and limiting those until those start to drop off a little bit more, so they're not oversaturating the county with a lot of, retail only wine and beer to go. And the 21, I believe, includes distilled spirit. So that's the distinction between the two.
Right. But I think in general, because it's alcohol and not food, there is, just like cigarettes, a desire to limit the proliferation throughout town.
And Joe, could you just identify the type 20 and 21 that you mentioned, just for public record?
Yeah, so type 20 is the retail sale for beer and wine, and then type 21 includes beer, wine, and distilled spirits.
And that's without a restaurant. The restaurant licensing is done in different numbers in terms of the ABC.
Okay.
And they've got like 7 of them. So we're not going to worry about what those numbers are. It's just the retail sale without a restaurant versus having a restaurant and doing these practices.
Yeah, going back to my question, I can understand that would be my concern, is the prevalence of places where without a front retail door and the public seeing it happen, more sales to minors could happen. Although I think with high-end wines, that's not going to happen. But I think that sending it to the Planning Commission for that purpose to make that determination would be a good way to proceed. I guess I'm supporting that.
Okay. And Chair Fernandez, I think Commissioner Burns has her hand raised as well.
Go ahead, Dave.
Forgive me if you already said this. I had to change my hearing aid battery out, so I missed a little bit. But one of my thoughts or concerns is regarding the offsite sales. When, as you mentioned, if you're at a restaurant and you have wine left, they'll often let you take it rather than have you sit there and drink it. However, with a bottle of wine, they cork it and you have to keep it in your trunk because there is an open alcohol. You're not allowed to have open beverages in your car. So during the pandemic, they were selling cocktails and they were in just regular glasses with lids on them. My concern is that can't be put in the trunk. So if we as a planning commission do approve this, how does that leave, what is the responsibility of the person buying the alcohol for ferrying the alcohol to where they're going to consume the alcohol if it's not in a closable, sealable vessel?
That's an excellent question, and probably to wait for deliberation, but that's
Okay.
Okay. I had a question. So is there a definition of what purchase would need to be made at a restaurant? I mean, can they, anything that they sell, a pack of gum, does that have to be a meal? I mean, and how do you determine that specification of what they would need to purchase?
So I think in my mind, it would need to be something that's also on the menu. The intent is that it is, and again, this isn't about whether or not they can do it or not. It's whether this is approvable at a staff level and still consistent with our zoning ordinance, which we're not changing. This is an interpretation of how to apply it. To me, it could be, if you look at any of the 3 practices, and I will share my screen on this because that may help. So sale of alcohol along with a meal. I mean, restaurants don't generally sell gum. So are you buying a meal or, a bunch of appetizers or, at least a couple of appetizers to go with that. That would constitute, it's in conjunction with the meal. And what's happened during COVID is that I think the takeout has, portion of what a restaurant sales are has increased significantly. Not just during COVID, but it's still there. I mean, I certainly know of several restaurants in town that did not do takeout before COVID, and they're more than happy to do it now, realizing that there are folks who are still not comfortable going into a restaurant, but they want to support the restaurant. And so to me, that's certainly a sale. The unconsumed bottle, obviously they have consumed, whether it's wine or, just the adult beverage or a meal at the restaurant, it's certainly consistent with the use of a restaurant. You don't have to eat a meal when you go into a restaurant. You could certainly just, have a glass of wine with folks and then buy a bottle and then, or take the rest of the bottle home. Or item 3, where yes, it's after a meal or after having a glass of wine, something in the restaurant, and then you want to purchase additional to take home. So to me, all of those are pretty bright lines in terms of you're not going in just to buy a bottle of wine off the street and then leaving.
Got it. Okay. And I'm assuming that the ABC license has probably instruction as to how they need to package or allow this, say, open bottle. Do they need to package it?
I would, we have some restaurateurs here tonight, but I imagine that is probably something that has been figured out. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I think some of these licenses, although we may have concerns, but ABC kind of takes care of that because they're saying if you have this kind of license, this is how you need to conduct your business or do things. So
right.
All right.
And I do know that they are in some of the things, the regulations they had in place for COVID, some of them have changed, and some of them went away basically on December 31st of this year. There is the ability to continue to sell the not sealed bottles or beverages, but they do need to register with the ABC, and so they would need to let the ABC know, and presumably there are practices that go along with that. Again, I'm trying not to get us involved too much with the ABC's business and assume that they are doing their job in terms of consistency of state law between an open bottle and the open carry laws for vehicles.
Okay. All right. I don't see any other questions from commissioners, and there really isn't a presenter, right? So I can open for public comment.
Yeah, I was the presenter, so yeah, there we go.
Great. So go ahead and open for public comment, and Carrie, go and give them instructions on that.
Sure. So if you would like to make a public comment, and I do see someone has already raised their hand virtually, you can do that. You can let me know in the chat, or you can physically raise your hand, and I'll note that and get to you. The first commenter I see is Dr. Michelle Kelly. Michelle, can you see the 3-minute timer?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead with your comment.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you, commissioners. I'm here to present something later, but in this conversation, one of the things, I live on Cleveland, so that's near Dee's Diner. And what I've seen over the last 10 years is there are more spots that are having alcohol with meals, and there are more spots that are having takeaway. And so just some raw data to think about. Our population, 18 and over, that is 120 permits we have for our town. So that's 1 permit or site, either off sale or on sale, per 53 people. So if we're just talking on sale, so that would be restaurants, that's 1 permit per 84 people, 18 and over. And if we're talking about off sale, that's 1 permit per 143 people. So I hear you talking about restaurants. I'm in a neighborhood. My neighborhood borders the center of town. And I'm asking you to think about supporting family-friendly town and neighborhoods. And we're not necessarily talking about underage drinking. There's so much data that tells us density of alcohol distribution points leads to poorer outcomes. It leads to economic problems, and it decreases real estate values. And one of the things I'm here tonight is to just ask you to look at evidence-based numbers about what healthy communities have. ABC doesn't bat last here, you do. So that's my comment, and I have some more numbers later. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I was muted. Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Next, we have Lowell. Lowell, can you see the 3-minute timer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Please
go ahead with your comment.
Thank you. I generally support Carrie's interpretation. I think there's been a lot of unclarity that goes back before COVID in terms of looking at, I looked at a bunch of licenses, and I think those who have off-sale privileges and those who have on-sale privileges, having pulled several licenses in the past, it's inconsistent. It's one of my restaurants, we asked for it. Another restaurant, we never asked for it, but we got it. So the inconsistency should just be tightened up in terms of that. But as long as people know they should ask, up front, and that it's, the staff is clear about, how it functions, I don't really see any issue with that. As far as Dr. Kelly's kind of numbers about the statistics in Sebastopol, I mean, Sebastopol serves a community that is way bigger than the town of Sebastopol itself. There's 50,000 or more people in Western Sonoma County that come to dine and shop in Sebastopol. So let's just be aware that the city limits of Sebastopol doesn't represent the business needs within Sebastopol. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment on this item? Okay, I don't see any further comments, so I'll turn it back to you, Chair Fernandez.
Okay, I'll go ahead and close public comment on this item and bring it back to Commissioner for any deliberation, comments, additional questions, or motions. And could you, Carrie, if you mind just, go ahead, Commissioner Fritz.
Yeah, just a comment that I think that the interpretation as laid out in the staff report it makes sense to me. I think it's reasonable that people can, if they're getting a takeout meal, they can get takeout alcohol as well. I think it's fine for someone to have a partially consumed bottle and take that to go. And, if you're purchasing an extra bottle of wine to take home with you, I think all three of those are fine to leave at a staff level review. Yeah, I just wanted to support the interpretation. I think it seems to make sense. And if there's no other comment about it, I make a motion to approve the interpretation as submitted to us tonight.
Okay, we have a motion to approve it as submitted.
I'll second that.
Okay, and we have a second. All right, any other further discussion? All right, Carrie, go ahead on the vote.
Okay, Commissioner Burns,
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly,
Aye.
Commissioner Ottinger,
Yes,
Vice Chair Fritz,
Aye.
and Chair Fernandez.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. That motion has passed, and I will now, because this is a item that I have referred to the Planning Commission, now that the commission has issued a concurrence with this interpretation, it is subject to a 7-day appeal period prior to being final, and subject to the appeal procedures. If you are interested in that, please contact the Planning Department.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for your work on this and clarifying that. I think it's very helpful going forward. Yeah. Okay, item 5B, PLR report quarterly assessment, and go ahead on that one.
This is also myself. So this is the first quarterly report on the Paella restaurant to the Planning Commission. This is a result of I believe the City Council added this condition when they heard the appeal for this project. That there be 2 quarterly reports, and then after that there be a review by staff every 6 months. So this is the first quarterly report, and I will say, the council did not specify either, what that report should include. So we as staff have taken our best effort in terms of what you might want to, what the commission might be interested in hearing about based on the prior hearings and concerns expressed by the community. So we have included that information, but we certainly would like to hear from the commission as well if there are other components of it that you would like us to address in any future reports. So what we did is we reviewed both anything communications the city had with any members, and then I did also interview the HR firm that Paella had engaged, and then that came out in a subsequent memo, and I'll review that after going through the main report. So the restaurant opened in October 2022. We did receive one complaint with a few, it's actually 4 potential violations that were expressed of concern to the complainant. 2 of those planning staff did confirm. One was that the conditions of approval were not posted as required in the conditions of approval, and that the restaurant was selling off-sale liquor as wine as which is not allowed by its conditions. That's condition number 15. And that is retail sales unassociated with food sales. So the bottle shop and listing retail sales on their website. As we do with all complainants and complaints, we had contacted the restaurant directly to resolve those. They did request, they did post the conditions of approval once being notified of that. And then we did give them, I believe, a week to take down any advertising on their website and cease any retail sales. They did comply with that. However, I will say that I noticed a couple of weeks ago that there's a very large list of retail prices on their website again. Prior to the hearing, which is later tonight as a separate item of theirs requesting the ability to do that. Additionally, we did receive a couple of other potential complaints. They were not verified or found to be consistent. The main one of those was the potential that Lowell was on site without anyone else being present, which was not. We were not able to verify that. It was, I believe, also before the restaurant had officially opened. And then the other was a concern that the hours, which are Tuesday to Saturday, noon to 10:30, were beyond what was allowed. We did not have conditions of approval in any of the approval requirements for it. I believe Mr. Berlin did talk about the hours, and they had changed somewhat. However, we as staff found that the hours were reasonable within the context of the testimony, which was basically that Jeff Berlin would be the main operating manager for the restaurant. And knowing the restaurant world somewhat, 10-hour, 11-hour days, 5 days a week, 4 days a week is not unheard of in the restaurant industry at all. And so I did find that to be in substantial conformance with the approval. The second part of it was that the restaurant did have a contract with the outside HR firm, Personnel Perspectives. I spoke with Jeff last week and asked if I could give them a call. He said yes. When I did talk with them last Friday, and this is in the subsequent memo, which was sent up this afternoon, since this information came later after the publication of the report, they did note that they were terminating their agreement with the restaurant because there were certain items that they felt needed to be complied with that had not been responded to. One was that they had provided a draft employee handbook along with a number of policy questions for input from the restaurant, which were never responded to. Therefore, they were not able to finalize the handbook. And They did note that they had received proof of sexual harassment training from Mr. Berlin, but not from Lowell Sheldon. And they had been trying to contact the restaurant to set up some additional meetings, which never happened. So as a result, they did decide that they wanted to terminate that agreement. We've also heard from the restaurant that they are in the process of changing their human resources company. The other note is that the HR firm did have a hotline that was provided to employees, but they have not received any complaints from the employees at that time. So the restaurant is required under their conditions of approval to maintain a outside HR company. And I'm sure I do want to give Mr. Berlin a chance to provide any input he has on that, but they have notified us certainly that they are working to engage another firm.
Do you want to hear from me now, or do you have other things you want to say?
Yeah, we're just going to have commissioners ask for questions and then give you an opportunity to speak on that. Okay.
Right. Oh, and the one other thing I did want to note is that both the police and planning staff have been doing periodic spot checks of the restaurant, and we have not seen any other violations of the use permit conditions. And I think that is all I have for my report. And again, I would certainly entertain and be happy to get any input from the commission on if there's anything else you would like us to be looking at in terms of these reports. I know this is unusual, but you will find actually this is, I believe we've had a couple of other projects as well that had returned reports to the commission to make sure things were going well. Peacetown had, and I think we'll have one coming up for another applicant in a couple of months. So I realize that this is somewhat new to the commission, but I think we'll kind of get our hang of it as we go through in terms of what you'd like to see.
And procedurally, you want questions and also suggestions now or after public comment?
I think questions now, and if there are questions, did you look into this or did you consider this? That's fine. Suggestions on what you'd like, if you could hold that till deliberations,
okay.
that would probably be appropriate.
Okay. Vice Chair Fritz, go ahead.
Thanks. So regarding this, quarterly check-in. So this was something that the council added as a condition. So I'm wondering, is this going to be reported to the council as well, or is it something the council wanted the planning commission to receive the report only?
They wanted they didn't specify. They said staff shall review the CUP, the conditional use permit, after the restaurant commences operations to ensure conditions of approval are being adhered to. And then they wanted that schedule. They didn't necessarily say it needed to come to the planning commission, given the fact that they're requesting a amendment to their use permit as a separate and later item. And this happened to coincide with the first quarterly report. I felt that it was appropriate to bring it to the commission, since then the public can be made aware of it, and you have that, the question was likely to come up. So although this is a separate item from their use permit amendment review, this is sort of an opportunity. And I think, again, because this, and similar to the SAVES quarterly report, which you'll be hearing, I will certainly send this to the council so they know, probably not at a meeting, but just like the SAVES report, it will be sent to the council.
I guess my question, you're asking us what we want to see, but since it was a council condition, I'm wondering if we know what they wanted us to see. I'm not sure how to guide you what you want to see.
Sure.
What you want to see when it wasn't really something that we asked for anyway. So I'm not sure what
right. And I think
want to see.
Thank you, Vice Chair Fitz. Let me give a little refresher or background. The conditions of approval, which were placed, I believe, actually I know they were placed on the project by the Planning Commission as well, or by discussions with staff and brought to the Planning Commission, was that the use permit would be reviewed after a period of 1 year by the Planning Commission. And that at that time, they could potentially request some changes to Mr. Sheldon's restrictions in terms of not being able to consume alcohol on the premise as a member of the public. And so rather than wait for a full year and then spring something on you, this feels more like since we're already required by council to do that quarterly review, what expectations would you want to see? And I know the applicant's attorney had asked me the same question. What would make you change your minds on that? And I realize you can't prejudge what a future commission might say in the circumstances at that time. However, if there are issues that you feel need to be addressed, we would certainly want to be able to respond to those earlier rather than later and have something been going on for a year that was an issue.
Okay. And so this issue with the fact that they were doing off sale sales, that has stopped since they pointed out that was against their conditions of approval, correct? So they're not doing that currently. I realize we have an application for that tonight, but they have stopped in the meantime. It's not currently happening.
Correct. They did remove, their website still says bottle shop, so they certainly could have done a better job of removing it in my mind. But they did remove, they were originally advertising, hey, we have retail sales, and for an extra $10, you can consume it on site. Well, that's obviously not the way most restaurants operate. It's and so they did remove that from their menus and from their website, along with the advertising retail sales.
And their current ABC license does allow them to do off-site or off sales.
Yes, we were originally given incorrect information from the ABC, which is why I want to stay away from the ABC in terms of getting into their business and letting them do their thing. That they would need a different license, and then we were told by someone else that no, they confirmed no, they would not, but they do need the city's conditions. Condition 15, which is no off sales allowed to be modified.
All right. Thanks. That's all the questions I had.
Okay. Debbie, go ahead.
Sorry, Carrie, I'm still trying to understand what our role is here. So just if I could recap and clarify what I think you said, is that one of the conditions of the license that the council put was that we review this, and in the review, it seems to me like what I'm hearing, the review is because after a year, they wanted Lowell to be able to participate in, alcohol which was not in the scope of what the current license is. And so is that the only thing we're looking at? Because I'm just confused as to what all this has to do then with that. And it just
sure. So and I should be clear that they weren't anticipating any future requests necessarily. I would say it's more along the lines like with Peacetown and the issues with parking on adjacent private property. The Planning Commission itself put a condition that after the first couple of events, they needed to return to the Planning Commission to make sure that things were going smoothly, that there weren't any issues that would need addressing. For instance, the commission could direct staff to bring the use permit back for a hearing to modify some conditions if you so chose, if something wasn't working, similarly to the Peacetown, where you wanted to see it again to make sure the conditions that you had placed on it were working as intended, given the concerns that were expressed in the public testimony. So that's what I say, not about any, hey, we want to we want to do something in the future. It was more about, hey, this is a very sensitive permit. We are going to issue it, but we want to monitor it closely and make sure that it's
So then I'm
being
wondering,
executed.
gotcha. Then I guess I'm wondering if it's applicable, because at first I thought it's not, if this is just about whether Lowell should be able in a year to participate in any, full capacity of, and we relift those restrictions, or if it's about how do we think it's going with the restrictions that we did, place on them. And if that is what we're looking at today, I would say not a great report card, where, the offsite sales happened, I guess, because it was such a sensitive issue and there was so much around this. I would have been squeaky clean so that there's no way when I'm under review, anybody could potentially have anything to say other than you guys are fantastic, keep going. I hear you that with the things that they didn't comply with, it seems like they were my impression is they were very fast to comply and did so in a timely manner. The most concerning one to me, because the alcohol use, I think, is such a gray area right now, the offsite, alcohol sale, because of COVID and other people do, like, that just seems very kind of gray. And the one that really concerns me is hiring, this HR firm and having the HR firm let them go because they feel like they weren't complying. And that Lowell, from my understanding, if I heard it right, didn't complete the training, only I believe
Jeff.
Jeff did. So if that is part of what we're here to discuss, then to me those things are extremely, concerning, and raise a red flag. I wish we would be sitting here and there were no red flags and it was just like, this is fantastic, this is great. But again, that's my concern, that I don't feel like the commission has the time nor the desire to continue to be a police, or, having to look at these things, that the onus was in their court to comply with the conditions that they were given. And being the seriousness of it, I'm surprised that they weren't complied to the T, and that raises a red flag for me.
Any other questions or clarifications from commission? All right. At this point, I'll go ahead, if there's representative from the restaurant would like to make any comments, go ahead.
Want to go first?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, if you could identify yourself, please.
I'm Jeff, the owner of Piala Restaurant, and we've done everything to be compliant from day one regarding the off-sale wine. That was what we understood to be part of our liquor license, which according to the ABC is part of our abilities. We were not aware of the city's different policy. And then from the moment we were made aware of it, it's been a back and forth negotiation. So in terms of trying to get to the bottom of what we're legally allowed to do and what we aren't, but we have been compliant 100% ever since that was brought to our attention. Regarding human resources firm, we employed the personnel perspective. We purchased a handbook from them. I did my harassment training. Lowell has done his. If you want to know our side of this situation with the HR firm, then they're a company that charges by the hour a lot of money. And for each service, each step of different various services that we used and paid for, the ones that we wanted and we needed for our business to be compliant. And we chose not to utilize a number of other services that they offered. but we were compliant 100% of the way. We have the handbook that they created for us is here and available to all the staff. They've all read through it, signed acknowledgements of it. The hotline has been posted up on the walls in the restaurant since day one, well, since the day that we engaged that human resources company. So there's never been anything non-compliant from our side regarding any of these terms. We have made every attempt to adhere to the agreement that we made with the City Council and with the Planning Commission in order to open and operate this business selling wine, regarding staff and human resources issues, regarding Lowell's presence here. There is no non-compliance here. You know, as far as the way you interpreted your conversation with the HR company, they're a money-making business and they wanted us to keep using more and more services that we didn't want to have to pay for because they're very expensive and they were beyond our realm of what we needed to utilize them for to be compliant. So, you know, I think that's all I really have to say is that we've done everything by the book, by the letter. The issue regarding off-sale wine has been something that there hasn't been a clear answer. It's been a back and forth conversation for months. So, but we have made every effort to be compliant up until this meeting, waiting for this meeting to happen.
Thank you. Lowell, did you have comments as well?
Can I ask a quick question about something he said? It's just really super quick. I just want to make sure I heard you right, because you said that Lowell did take the training, but because I thought that the report we got said he didn't. So can you just clarify that just to make sure I heard you right?
Yeah, I've done a number of trainings over the years since over the last several years, and there's no reason for me to do another training because I don't work at the restaurant. I don't work with the staff. So why would I need to do a sexual harassment training again with the staff? It doesn't make any sense. But even if it did make sense, I've done several. So that's the short answer.
And Commissioner Burns, I can clarify that there was no proof of this submitted to the HR firm, and it sounds like, I mean, I don't know anything beyond that. They just know that they received a certificate from Jeff. They did not from Lowell.
Thank you.
And I did try to make my report as like factual as a reporter could be, and not add any discretionary thoughts to it. So that is what's in that memo. Realizing that there was a difference of opinion between
But you didn't ask.
Jeff's side of the story and the HR's. The best I could do was, frankly, just here's what he said, here's what she said, kind of a thing.
Okay. Any other questions for the representatives? Okay. Okay, at this point, I guess we'll open for public comment. Is that for public comment on the report? Is that right, Carrie?
Yes, so this would be public comments on the quarterly report item. Okay, I do, and I will note that we did receive one comment from the public, which was forwarded to the commissioners. Kyle Falbo, I see you have your hand raised. Can you see the 3-minute timer?
Yes, I can.
Excellent. Please go ahead with your comment, Kyle.
Something that Lowell just mentioned makes me want to get some clarity from the commission. I believe there were stipulations both in the approval of the restaurant as well as how it proceeded. And if I'm not mistaken, perhaps within those conditions was the requirement of completion of sexual harassment training. I could be wrong, and that's fine, but I would love to get that clarity from the commission as to whether or not that was a condition. Because to me, it seems like if that was a condition, past training would not satisfy that training because the performance of completing that training as part of the conditions. So if I can get some clarity on back when those conditions were put in place and whether or not that was the case, that would be great. Thanks.
Thank you, Kyle. We can clarify that after public comment. Dr. Michelle Kelly, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, I had a document I sent you. I think now other things have come to light that in terms of the compliance, they're out of compliance in several areas. The information I sent to the commissioners is about the larger issue. We have at least 6 people who signed a letter, and we're concerned about the concentration and the density of alcohol sales outlets. And I would like to ask that that just be in a parking lot for now in terms of a conversation and maybe some targets that the meeting can talk about later. But I'm in opposition of allowing them. I think actually this violates their conditional use. So if this was my employee, I would not continue the relationship. So I'm asking the commissioners to really look at this pattern. And this is a conditional use permit. So what conditions do you need to see broken in order to actually withdraw the permit? Thank you.
Sorry, I was muted there. Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Are there any other public comments? Okay, I do not see any public comments on this item, so we'll bring it back to the chair. Chair, would you like me to try to answer some of those questions?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and close public comment and then, ask you to respond to those two.
Okay, and and just so folks know, on the city's website for this meeting, we do have attached to the report the actual conditions of approval for the application. So if anyone from the public would like to view them, and I'll also show them on my screen here. There is, so to address Mr. Falbo's question, there is no requirement for sexual harassment training. The conditions, and this is the conditions regarding Mr. Sheldon, are 1B and 2 and 3. And so those are related to basically not right to enter premises no greater than any other member of the public, and that Mr. Boulin shall be present whenever, if he is there when it's closed, that Mr. Boulin needed to be present. The second is that Mr. Sheldon shall not be involved with any personnel related matters. And that he shall not serve or consume alcohol in any capacity. In terms, so there is no requirement that he take sexual harassment training at this time, at least. So that is certainly not a violation of the conditions of approval. In terms of Dr. Kelly's, we do have, there's a couple of options for the commission. One is you can certainly, if you feel these violations or missteps, or however you want to phrase them, are significant, you can direct staff to schedule a review, a formal review of the hearing. That would be a public hearing as opposed to this quarterly report, which is a little bit more informal in that capacity. And Dr. Kelly, just in terms of what would constitute revocation of the use permit, that would either need to go through that process, or, which is fairly unusual for a conditional use permit, if either condition 2 or 3 is violated, there is no public hearing required. It simply would be revoked, and it can be revoked at a staff level. And so that's if there's any exercise of personnel related by Mr. Sheldon, or if he's found to be serving or consuming alcohol on the premises. The item 6 is the engaging the outside HR firm to manage all aspects of employee complaints, issues, or concerns. The and I will note, it is fairly clear. It's its own standalone requirement that off-sale beer and wine is not permitted. So that's obviously being addressed with the request later tonight. I don't think that was terribly unclear in the conditions myself, but that's for the commission to judge. So I think that answers the questions we had. Chair Fernandez, did I miss any of the questions from the public?
I don't think so. Okay, I guess we'll bring it back to commission for deliberation or question.
This is where any concerns you'd like us to investigate, and I will say, because the conditions of approval. Sorry, let me show this one my screen one last time before you get started. 1C is the condition related to the staff review of the conditional use permit. It does not require that it come to the planning commission, so we can certainly do this at a staff level and only bring it to you. I mean, I can certainly consult with Chair Fernandez. I'm having regular meetings with him. If there are issues that we feel might need to be elevated to the commission in the future, or if you'd like to see it again, that also would be helpful direction for staff.
I do actually have just a question. So on item 15, you pointed out, which is the off-sale beer and wine is not permitted with this approval, but the license that they got from ABC does allow off-sale.
Right, the way ABC works, and I understand that the restaurant feels they were confused about this. The way the licensing work is, you need to be allowed at both the local level and the ABC level. The ABC restaurant license do allow for it if it's allowed at the local level.
Okay, yeah, because I can kind of see this as being, that saying, hey, this approval doesn't grant you permission to do the off-sale beer and wine, inferring that, well, you need to have ABC's permission. But it wasn't super clear that I guess you also needed city approval on here. So, I kind of,
right.
Once you told them, they did stop on that. So, okay. Yeah, Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, I think in my mind, the requirement to review the do these quarterly reviews is to see that they are complying with the conditions. So whatever form that takes, I mean, if you want to bring it back to the commission, I'm okay with that. I guess it's just, wanting to know if there have been any complaints, in the previous quarter, if there have been any issues, or if staff has been made aware of any issues that are out of compliance. And I think I'll just note that, I think it's not totally uncommon for a business to not totally understand all of the conditions. If this isn't something that you get use permits on a regular basis, sometimes they can be a lot of conditions that you have to comply with, and it's not totally unusual that you may inadvertently let one slip by. It's not to make an excuse, but it's also just to say that, when we are made aware of that, we try, staff tries to inform the use permit holder, and so that they can come into compliance. It's not just usually, oh, you didn't post the conditions of approval, therefore we're revoking your use permit. We were given the chance to rectify it. So I think that these quarterly or every 6 months or whatever the reports are just a way for us to stay abreast of if there have been any issues, and hopefully as things, it's only been open a few months, and now as things kind of get going, and it should hopefully flow more smoothly now that everyone is aware of what the requirements are. And whether or not comes to planning commission, I don't have a strong opinion about, but I don't know that there's anything specific that I would ask to see other than just to know again, if any complaints have been made or if staff has been made aware of any kind of violations.
Carrie, if you have any comments on that, or move on to the next?
No, I think actually Vice Chair Fritz spoke very correctly. I will say that is exactly, when staff is made aware of a violation of condition, our first step is always to reach out with the applicant, make sure they understand the conditions and gain compliance. And yes, and certainly Kaya was responsive to that with the conditions and with the off sale advertising.
And if staff makes some kind of determination, the applicant can appeal to planning commission, right? Is how the process.
Correct. Yeah. So in this case, I mean, once you look at it, yes, off sale means you can't.
Yeah.
And that's part of why we did the sort of the back and forth with Jeff and Lowell is one of the reasons why the interpretation and how we're applying that locally so that it is crystal clear to everybody. Yes, you're allowed to do these things, but you can't. If you want to do this stuff, then that requires an amendment to your use permit or planning commission. And planning commission approval, not just a staff level thing. It's not because it's not something. I mean. It's not something I can waive as a planning director. I can't say, oh, okay, yeah, just go ahead until whenever. No, it says, no, I can't, I don't have the authority to waive a condition of approval.
And so I'll get back to you, Kathy, just in a sec here. I just have one question also related to this is that if we wanted to clarify, let's say the off sale beer and wine that needs to be approved, is that something that can be modified and clarified, or is that then open up a whole can of worms of going back to the agreement? So better to just leave as is.
Do you mean how we write the condition of approval?
Yeah, well, in other words,
in the future,
future, or do we let's say, oh, we should go back and clearly state that the city needs to approve that. I guess for future, I mean, I guess we're not here to.
Well, they're bringing an application to do that tonight. So that's what we're reviewing tonight.
Right.
So I don't think we need to revise the condition because
right. Okay.
they're coming to
I'm just saying, for future things, it would be good to kind of.
I think Chair Fernandez, for any future applicants, the determination that the planning commission, the interpretation that you just did tonight as our first item, we can certainly make sure that is, we can craft those three things that are allowed and the one that's not into an expanded off sale of beer and wine is not permitted. If this is approval, this includes, this, however, you can do this kind of a thing. So we can craft that into a new standard condition of approval that's clearer than, that elaborates on, provides that detail to any future applicants.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's what I was getting to. Okay. Go ahead, Kathy.
Yeah, I want to thank Carrie for bringing this to us on the agenda so that we could see the report and that the public could know of the report's existence and have an opportunity to comment, and that the applicant, the people in question, were able to publicly state their side of the situation as well. I think going through this process is good. So thank you for bringing the report to us, and I look forward to seeing the next one.
Do you have any suggestions of anything additional or changes on there, Kat?
I think the whole situation and the truth about it is important. So whatever comes up, I think we want to hear about it.
Good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Linda, did you have any questions or comments?
Sure. I'll weigh in a little bit. I appreciate having the report. And because of the issues that were brought up, I think it's a good idea to continue with them, even though I would like to see it as a planning commissioner. And then how long, I guess I missed how many quarters is this supposed to go on?
So the condition is to do it on a quarterly basis for the first 2 quarters, and then every 6 months.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that information. And certainly want to, the HR firm hiring is also an important thing to the commission when we initially approved. And I think that everything I've heard, I concur with the rest of my planning commissioners. I don't know if I have anything extra that I think needs to be included, but I do think it was important for this coming forward because of the information that was provided to us. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kelly. And yes, we do. We'll certainly want to get the replacement firm and know that that's in place from when that's completed.
And do you have any information as to when, or maybe they can just comment on that? Do you have a timeline when you might be replacing that HR firm?
Yeah, immediately. We have one that we're pretty sure we're going with, but we're just looking for a couple other alternatives to make sure we have choices. But yeah,
Okay.
The moment that I had that conversation with our previous HR firm, we immediately started beginning to look at new options.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. Okay. Well, I mean, we don't need necessarily to approve this report, right? It's just comments or additions and so forth. So I think
Yes, it's receiving the report and providing any direction to staff that you so chose. So, thank you.
okay. And yeah, and I want to add my appreciation as well for the report and the detail of it. So thank you for bringing that up. Okay. So if there's nothing further on this, can move on to the next.
Chair Fernandez, I do see that the applicant.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, go
Jeff
ahead.
has his hand raised.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I feel like compelled to add one last time because it doesn't set well with me being here, working hard every day, trying to make sure I'm running this business the way we agreed collectively as a city and a county to be compliant and to follow all the rules that we, talked about several months back, and to hear the language about what we've done and how I've run this business in terms of like red flag, violation, non-compliant, bad report card. I mean, all this language is inaccurate and not reflective of the way that I've been laboring to adhere to our agreement together as me as a business owner and you as planning commission. So I just ask that you are aware of that language that's been used during this meeting, and that with the exception of the off-premise wine sales, there is nothing that's been a violation or a red flag, or that's just not accurate. So I'm just asking that there's an awareness of that language because I don't find it to be accurate at all.
Okay. Thank you for that. All right. And so we'll, if there's nothing further, move on to item 6A. Redwood 2334 South Main Street Conditional Use Permit Amendment.
Thank you, Chair Fernandez. I'll give you the staff report on this one. So the report for you tonight is the owner of the Redwood restaurant is proposing to provide a 90 square foot boutique wine shop in combination with their 1,200 square foot restaurant and bar. The area that will be selling off-site alcohol is approximately 90 square feet and is located within the southeast corner of the building, adjacent to the Main Street building frontage. The food sold on site consists of small and large plates for sharing and is focused on local produce and seafood. The restaurant is located within a downtown core district and is taking over the previous Ginger Thai restaurant. This restaurant was approved in June of 2022 for the sale of beer and wine at an administrative level, as it met the requirements of a bona fide kitchen Those requirements include the primary use is for sit-down service and serves food to customers at all times when alcohol is being served. However, as all alcohol use permits in Sebastopol are conditional use permits, the city does not allow for off-sale beer and wine under the administrative alcohol permit, and therefore would require an amendment to be approved by the Planning Commission. So the applicant is here to have that condition for the off-sale beer and wine be amended so they can have that function of their storefront. And with that, I will conclude the staff report, and Ryan Miller is here as the applicant. And once the commission has, if the commission has any other questions for me, I'm happy to answer them. And if not, then I will turn it over to Ryan.
Right. So any questions from commissioners? Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Thanks. There's a couple of conditions that I think this was like a copy paste that I think need to be cleaned up. I don't know if you want to talk about that now or if we should wait till deliberation. This is a kind of question.
Yeah, if it's a clarification or just that.
Yeah. So this is in the Exhibit A findings. The findings. So finding 2. There's a general plan goal 6 or CHW6 about reducing the harmful impacts of alcohol, tobacco, and drug use. I think this can be removed. I think this was specifically, for Piala, and it refers to Lowell specifically. So I don't think we need to involve Lowell in this application. So I think that whole thing can be taken out as a finding. It's not really finding appropriate to this use permit.
Okay.
And then in the Exhibit B, the conditions, so 1A is just blank. So I don't know what that is.
That's actually meant, thank you, Chair, Vice Chair Fritz, that is actually meant to be there in case the commission wants to add any conditions.
Okay.
If it's not utilized, we'll strike that from the conditions, and I'll just go on except as modified with the rest of the conditions.
Okay. Then 2G is no alcoholic beverages or beer or wine are sold or dispensed for consumption beyond the premises. And isn't that kind of what we're doing? And for you to buy something to take it home. So we don't want a condition that says that they can't do that when that's what we're approving.
Yes, you're correct. And this is just so you all know the way that we structured both this and the next hearing where it's an amendment. This is actually their existing approval with some modifications. And so it looks like we just missed that one. So this is what, this is what it looks like when we issue a staff level, other than we've added the new permit that was submitted November 16th to item 1. You're absolutely correct. The F and G should both be modified to remove references to does not include the sale for offsite consumption. And then the other change that we've purposely done on both of them is to item 10, which is to remove that off sale of beer and wine is not permitted, and replace it with and this is the actual condition that is required for off sale locations. The other off sale location conditions aren't applicable because they're more about like if Rotten Robbie's were to sell it or something, and you have a drive-through or something. And I do think it could actually end, that one could actually end after the front door, period, because neither of these uses have anything that related to 1998. So I apologize for that. This was trying to figure out how do we modify this so that it's not a rewrite or a duplicate of conditions. So those would be our modifications.
And then condition 11. I thought it was typically 10 a.m. to 9 p.m., not 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. Or am I mistaken? Isn't the don't we usually cut off the bottle throwing away at 9 p.m.?
I think it is, and I would suggest, assuming the applicant is okay with it, that we can probably modify this at this time too.
Okay.
This location is in downtown, so, but there are residences downtown and things can be heard acoustically throughout town
Yeah.
in weird ways. So
Yeah.
it would be good to be consistent.
I think that would be good. And then it's also just a little confused about condition 14 referring to an adjacent courtyard area. I don't recall this building having a courtyard area adjacent to it. And so I wasn't sure what that was referring to.
I'm not sure about that either. John, do you know if there's a courtyard?
I don't believe so, but it just includes.
I mean, I see
Is
that
there-
making the sidewalk free of trash. That's, I get
Yeah.
that, but I'm not sure what the
that's-
courtyard is.
No, there's, I don't believe there's an actual courtyard there, but it just includes. If there was.
So maybe that could be, we could strike that as well in this approval, just to allay any future confusion about courtyards. But they filled the courtyard and without any approval. Yeah, I think that's all my questions for now. Thanks.
Thank you, Paul. And thank you for your detail as usual. Linda, did you have questions or comments?
I have two. Do you know how many of those off sale restaurants do we have in town? And then I'll wait to get that answer and then my second question.
Linda, I don't have that readily available, but I can work on trying to get that information for you. And are you
I
just
just don't,
specific to off sale only?
yeah, just the
Okay.
off sale. I know I haven't gone into every restaurant in town, but I don't recall that being a very common thing, but I'm just wanting to know. And then also, does this change of use with the alcohol to allow off sale, is this follow the property, or as the property changes hands, or if it does this also apply to anyone who leases or purchases that property, that business?
So generally entitlements do follow the land, however, and the way our alcohol use permit, we do have a transfer license. The way that works is you can apply for a transfer license, which would be all the same rights, as long as there's not a substantial change. If the commission wants it to be this component not to be transferable, you can put that in the conditions.
Okay. All right, those are my questions right now.
Okay, thank you. What was in that previous site? Was that also a restaurant? That was-
Yes, the Ginger Tie restaurant.
Yeah, okay. And they had, I know they didn't have off sale, but they had
Yes,
out. Yeah, so we're basically replacing something that was already there. We're not adding essentially a new use in a new area, right?
correct. It's a restaurant for restaurant. And then in the case of the Redwood, they would be, the only addition they would have would be the off sale frontage of the kind of wine shop along
Okay.
the storefront.
Yeah, I just wanted to make that clear that it wasn't, we're putting a brand new site, but there was one there before, so, okay. Okay, well, is there a representative from the applicant would like to make any comments or presentation? Go ahead.
Yeah, we'll just introduce ourselves really quickly. My name is Ryan Miller,
I'm Geneva.
and we are the owners of the Redwood, which is hopefully going to be opening soon here in downtown Sebastopol. As John mentioned earlier, one of our goals is to kind of feature and support producers local to Sonoma County. So that includes winemakers, but also farmers, fishermen, just sort of other artisans, other producers in our community here. We definitely want to emphasize that we're a restaurant first. But due to the struggles that a lot of eating establishments have had since the onset of COVID, we do feel like it's beneficial to our success to have some retail takeaway as an alternative revenue stream for us. And so that's why we applied for the conditional use permit to allow us to do a small amount of retail of beer and wine out of the restaurant. Thank you.
Thanks.
We have questions. Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Burns.
I just have a question for the applicant. Just out of curiosity, I understand being a small business owner and wanting, especially in this economy, to have an extra revenue stream, but is there, is this like you're intending that people who are eating there will enjoy a bottle of wine or a beer that's unusual and they'll want to buy it and take it home? Or is it like, people would walk in off of the street and buy beer and wine? I guess I'm just trying to understand as a business, what is your model? Like, are you, it doesn't seem advantageous if it's just selling anything that you can get anywheres, but if it's a unique offering that people enjoy during their meal and then can take it afterwards. Does that question make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do anticipate the bulk of our focus for that is for people who are coming in and dining in the restaurant to be able to purchase something and take it home if they really enjoyed it. With the retail, we did want to make ourselves available to people who were interested in coming in and buying wine, but that would probably be more incidental of the business of the restaurant. It would be more, we suspect it would be more diners wanting to take something to go. Our selection of beer and wine is going to be focused on low intervention wines, small producers that aren't as sort of readily available in Sebastopol and in West Sonoma County as a whole.
Nice. Thank you so much.
Let's see, Linda, did you have any questions? Nope. Okay. All right. I don't see any other questions, Commission. I will go ahead and open it up for public comment.
Okay, for public comment, we have Dr. Michelle Kelly. Please go ahead.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I look forward to your restaurant. I walked by there and I saw you guys working hard on it. And I wish you all the best. I will be eating there definitely. But to the commission, again, I'm going to address one of the concerns I have is to identify density limits. The ABC is not the last word. It doesn't mean that they'll be safe and livable neighborhoods. And we've increased our off-sale and on-sale permits over time, but a question was asked tonight about how many restaurants do have off-sales. And if you don't have that data, I think that's important to have before this decision is made. And I would ask as a member of the public that it be made and to look at the trends over time of the numbers of permits for the public to analyze it and to guide in the planning of the community. So that's my comment, and that applies to both permits being asked for tonight. So the off sale of this restaurant, and then I've already commented on Piela, their permit. So I would encourage you to look at evidence-based guidelines in terms of population health. And it's not necessarily just underage drinking. It's just the more outlets and opportunities, whether it's a fine bottle of wine or it's a can of beer you get at the liquor store at the edge of town, it really does have an impact on population health. So thank you. I hope you'll consider what I have to say.
Thank you.
Okay, and we have Lowell has his hand raised. Lowell, please go ahead.
Thank you. Just in terms of kind of the skew of restaurants that are in town, and you know, a number of restaurants do have off-sale privileges that don't exercise it in this way. A number of restaurants don't have off-sale privileges that do exercise it in various ways, and that's why there's this clarification happening. But I think that, you know, the more we can support all businesses to be, you know, respectful, creative, build community, the better our town will be. Responsible consumption of alcohol is not a detriment to our community. It's a one of the many things that's allowed and has been allowed nationwide, and is a part of the fabric of our community, of our country, and how we function as a community. So I think that restaurants should generally be allowed to consume, to sell bottles of wine to go, but as long as they're aware of that when they apply for their use permit, then they can just request that. And I support Redwood to be able to do this as well. I think it creates diversity in terms of the kinds of offerings that are available, and I think it's a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lowell. I do not see any other public comments, but Chair Fernandez, John has his hand raised for some additional
Yes, I see that,
information.
and, yeah, sorry, John, I didn't see that before. Go ahead.
No worries. So Linda, I was able to pull the report quickly from ABC's website for what's actively licensed for off sale, which, as I mentioned earlier, they categorize those as type 20 and type 21. In Sebastopol right now, there's 45 locations. But that also does include kind of outside the city limits. So it's not, you know, it's Sebastopol kind of greater area rather than just the city limits of the Sebastopol. So I want to make that, you know, known that these numbers are coming from, you know, maybe a larger area than what we're kind of looking at as what we consider Sebastopol city proper. And then as far as ones that have on sale and off sale, there's 121 of those licenses in town, and those did range from it did include the type 20, 21, 40, 41, 47, 48, 58, 67, 68, 75, 79, 81, and 85. So there's a large list of both on sale and off sale in that total category, and those obviously aren't all the same use type when you come down to either a restaurant or a liquor store per se.
Right, and I will note on that, just looking through that list, that includes, so type 20 includes wineries, and includes a number of wineries that are outside of the city limits. So things like Boleto and Olivino and others are, and it also does include as a separate count those that have more than one license. So for instance, the Sonoma wine shops off of town is listed as Sebastopol. So I guess because they have a Sebastopol address. But they have both a 58 and a 41. And so that's, it does include not just, retail facing like you would think of as such as Safeway, or like the Punch Down is a restaurant that the Planning Commission actually just permitted in the Barlow to be open, where they will be a restaurant and off sale. And that's, they requested that from the get-go. And we can, if you'd like, we can do some more parsing of this data to actually get it down to what is actually within city limits and not duplicative license. But this is what we were able to get from the ABC on the short notice.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah, go ahead.
So does that include where you're doing retail if you're eating there, or if you're not, like just walking in off the street? Is it broken down like that?
Is this a question for us?
We, sorry, I believe we can break it down to people who don't have restaurants and are just off sale, because that's a separate license type 20 or 21. And there may be another one, but that is something that we can do. And so that would include things like, and I'm looking at my screen right now, and I'm happy to share it. This is all public information on the ABC's website, but it does include things like, obviously this is not in town, it's a winery, but it also includes things like Bill's Market and Deli. Again, this is actually not in town, it's north of town. But it also, the type 41 is, like the Taqueria El Favorito, that is a restaurant, so they have a type 41 license. I don't believe they have any off sale other than, what we just talked about, the to-go kind of a thing. They don't do off sale. And so we would be able to get, like Ochio's restaurant down by Soulful and Starbucks. We're able to run a license that says they're a restaurant. We would have to go through and check planning permits per se, or the actual restaurant to see, are they, we don't, I would say we don't have very many permits where it's actually a restaurant doing the retail as this kind of standalone retail. Right now, there are a few of them that we have permitted recently. Punch Down in the Barlow, and John, you had actually just said another one that Regen would have a license, not a restaurant license, but they have an on sale because they're wine tasting and they sell bottles. So we do have a number of those, Crooked Goat and Golden State Cider, those kind of tasting rooms would have that kind of both. They're not restaurants, but they have both of those.
The Rewind Retro Arcade Bar was the other one within the bar.
Thank you.
That was approved last year.
Any other questions, Linda?
The punchline, did we approve it with buying food? I don't recall. I don't remember now, I have to say.
Yes, their model was selling tapas style food at all times when alcohol was being served. So
right, they're the folks who have the commercial kitchen in Oakland and do the I want to say it's like sardines and something like that. It's like the
it's prepackaged.
Yeah, the specialty fish kind of things.
So that they don't do off sale. We didn't approve off sale, or we did?
You did. That came to the commission because it was off sale and not just a restaurant. So it's very similar to this permit.
And did we require that folks were patronizing the restaurant to be able to buy off sale?
No, that is not a requirement.
Okay. All right. Okay, that's my questions.
Great, thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, did you say me?
Yes, I'm sorry, yes.
Oh, I forgot I even had my hand.
Commissioner Burns.
I was going to reiterate what Lowell said, which was true, that a lot of the class 20s are not really being used for offset. And then Carrie said the same thing with wineries and whatnot. So it's hard to tell how many restaurants are actually using or have that license where they're selling alcohol. But if I'm understanding, some of the concern is about the density, but giving them an off sale permit wouldn't increase the density. They already have a license to have alcohol. Right, correct. It's just a matter of whether they can, okay, thank you, John. Just
Yeah.
a matter of whether they can now, I mean, I guess my feeling is that it's really hard for people to sustain a business right now. And if they're already selling alcohol and it's already, permitted, it seems like to give them a revenue source. And that's why I clarified one of my questions. Are they trying to have specialty items? Because that way I think it decreases the amount of walk-in traffic of people who would just go there, and becomes, someone who's enjoying a meal there and says, well, this was a really great, unusual bottle of wine. I'd like to be able to take it home. So anyway, my thoughts were all addressed.
Let's see, and then I think one other example, when we're talking about multiple licenses, so like I would think Community Market would be one, because they have retail sales, and then they also have the kind of, I don't know what you call it, bar, beer station there. So that'd be an example of a business having two different types, if I'm not mistaken. Okay.
Yeah, I believe that's correct. I'd have to double check that list to make sure, but that would make sense.
Okay, and I think it would be helpful, I think, in when items like this come up, to kind of have an idea. I know on one of the items, I think it was in October, November last year, there was a map I think you guys created. It had different dots and what types of license they had and stuff like that. So, I think that something like that would always be helpful. Even though we go back and have access, we kind of forget which meeting it was and where was it. So it's always good to kind of include it just so we have an idea on that. So, but other than that, I appreciate all the information on that. Okay, so we're looking for a motion for this item, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct? Okay.
And if you'd like, I can bring up the conditions of approval if there's any discussion on those. I have gone through and modified with Vice Chair Fritz's to remove references to off sale and the courtyard.
Okay.
And I think the only item that I heard Chair Fernandez that might be something is whether or not the off-sale privileges are transferable to a future owner or not. I don't know if that's a discussion the commission wishes to have.
And is it at this point, without doing anything, it is transferable? Is that what I'm hearing? Okay.
Correct. Our base code allows it to be transferable. As the only time they have to apply for is if they want to significantly change it, and that would be just like a use permit not involving alcohol. It could transfer to a new owner as long as they don't change the operating conditions.
Yeah, and my feeling is we should stay consistent with that, and we already have kind of that as a rule. I think if we make it specific to this one, we probably then we'd have to decide on all the other ones also as well. So, yeah, Paul, do you have additional comments or questions?
No, I'm just gonna, comment is that like Debbie, I mean, I think actually I just read an article about how difficult it is for restaurants to stay afloat and they need a new business model. And I think that this is, it makes sense that this would be an easy kind of transfer, especially for something, a business is trying to cultivate, kind of a unique and different wine selection. And, having the ability to sell that wine to patrons of the business, or someone may come and have a great bottle of wine and then they'll come back every week and keep buying that bottle of wine even if they're not eating there. I think that's it makes sense as a business model. And I also agree that it is an alcohol, already has an alcohol permit. We're just sort of revising it slightly, so we're not really introducing a new location that hasn't been serving alcohol before this. Ever since I've lived in Sebastopol, that location has served alcohol. So I think it's fine. And I think with the revisions that were made to the conditions that Carrie just brought up, I would like to make a motion that we approve this use permit applications with the conditions as amended.
Okay, and Debbie, I see that you have a question or comment.
Yeah,
Do we-
just one, can I say
Good.
one more amendment?
Yeah, go ahead, and then.
Well, I'm just wondering, because with a class 20, they could also sell, actually, it's something that Commissioner Fritz just said and Lowell said earlier, that, Sebastopol there's a lot of people from all over the country to eat here. It just doesn't serve. So with a class 20, I believe that they could also, with the offsite, if somebody came from out of town and wanted, fell in love with their wine, they could ship it to them. What is that? How does that, is that something they would be able to do, Carrie, or?
So John can answer this one.
Yeah, so I did speak to ABC about this and Ryan as well. I believe that ABC is not currently issuing any type 20 licenses as of right now. So I guess we could put a condition on there that if at some point in time the ABC does allow those type 20 licenses to be reissued, that they could apply for one.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was a type 20. Sorry, guys.
No. So they're
okay. I just wanted to make sure that was in there for them in case but yeah, never mind.
Yeah, and Commissioner Burns, I would say on that front, if they are allowed to do off sale as city staff, I mean, if I needed to interpret it, although I don't think I do, off sale in terms of the city's perspective could be shipped or sold to someone walking out the door. We don't care. Whatever they need to do with ABC, they need to do with ABC. And so if they wanted to do a type 20 later on, because their business they were getting on requests for that, in my opinion, they could do, and for the record, they could do that without any changes to this because they've already come to the city to ask for off sale. And we have said yes.
Okay, that was all. Thank you so much.
Assuming you say yes, but yes.
Yeah, we have a motion. So is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, Commissioner Burns second. And any other comments? I just wanted to add also, we talked about, adding this option that kind of helps the restaurants. And I think it also encourages restaurants to support local wineries and boutique wineries, because those are the wines that someone might be interested in to then purchase. If it's, a big everyday kind of type wine that they can get at Safeway or any other place, there's nothing unique about it. So I think it encourages restaurants to also support local winemakers as well. All right. So we have a first and second. If there's any other discussion, we'll go ahead and go for the poll for the vote.
Okay, I will do a vote. Commissioner Callan.
Aye.
Commissioner Burns.
Yes.
Commissioner Ottinger.
Yes.
Vice Chair Fritz.
Aye.
And Chair Fernandez.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion has passed for approval as amended. And there is a 7-day appeal period for this approval. So Ryan, once that appeal period is passed next Tuesday, you can commence with that use along with the rest of your entitlements.
Yeah, and good luck to you guys. Looking forward to attending as well.
All right. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. All right. Up next, item 6B. 6BI, I guess this, Payel 7233 Hillsbury Avenue conditional use permit amendment.
Thank you. So I'll do this one as well. We've kind of spoken about this project throughout the night, so I'll kind of make it pretty quick here. So the applicant, Puyallup Restaurant, is applying to amend their conditional use permit, which would allow for the retail sales of off-sale beer and wine. The amendment is specific to condition number 15, which currently does not allow for off-sale beer and wine as incidental use to Puyallup restaurants. The reason for this amendment is shortly after the Puyallup restaurant had opened up, the planning department received a complaint from a member of the public indicating that Puyallup was violating the off-sale condition within their use permit. After that was made to city staff, we reached out to the applicant, the restaurant, and they stopped their off-sale beer and wine and are here to amend that condition to allow for that off-sale beer and wine. And Lowell is here representing the restaurant tonight. So if there are any questions staff related, I'm happy to answer them. If not, then we'll hand it over to Lowell to present anything that he may have.
Okay. Thank you, John. Let's start with any questions for staff. Okay, don't see any on there. Okay. Yeah, Lowell, go ahead.
I guess the last time I point on this whole conversation is, you know, a number of commissioners have brought up, you know, that it's great to allow businesses like restaurants to utilize the full capacity of their ABC license and, you know, sell bottles of wine for people to take home if they want, or they have all this wine that they buy, you know, like display it for customers to take home. And it's great that we're supporting that here. It's just should be noted that, you know, this is a $3,000 exercise to get this support. So if the goal is to make it easier for businesses to make to use their ABC license to sell wine or whatever it is they want to do that's within a reasonable kind of scope of what's allowed, then, you know, I really think all restaurants should just be allowed to do this. It's what the ABC allows. You know, the city staff kind of went through this very rigorous process of like delineating, you know, well, if you come in and you buy some food, then you can, you know, buy a bottle of wine, which kind of sounds good, but in reality, you can come into any restaurant and buy wine. You don't have to buy food. So why is there this extra, you know, hurdle? It's like, it's just creating more rules. And, you know, that's kind of unfortunately the trajectory of what, you know, whatever government does is just create rules and regulations as opposed to kind of opening it up for businesses to function in a reasonable fashion. Let the ABC regulate this. If it's a restaurant, you know, ABC says you have to have a kitchen if you're a restaurant. You have to sell food. Like that should be the end of it. The city should not be delineating these very minor kind of nuanced ways of how a restaurant can function. But that's already in the past, you know, so I don't know. I just wanted to kind of point out that there's a slightly bigger context to all this. But, you know, it is what it is. And as long as, you know, the city staffs, you know, I think every restaurant should have off-sale privileges just automatically. Half the restaurants already do, and they're, you know, half the restaurants don't for no real rhyme or reason. Like, why? What are we stopping here? You know, what are we doing all this for, except for to kind of exercise a government's kind of, you know, the kind of inherent thing the government does, which is, you know, create more rules. So I don't know. That's my 2 cents. But we've already talked about all the other issues, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Okay. Seeing none, I will open for public comment.
Okay, I see Dr. Michelle Kelly, you have your hand raised.
Hi, last comment. Thanks, everybody.
Please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go
Okay.
ahead.
So I oppose the off-sale license. I feel like the restaurant has not shown to be 100% in compliance. Remember, this is a conditional year approval. So this is 4 months in. Let's see how the next 4 months go. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public make comments?
I did not see any other members of the public. We have received a couple of comments, or at least one by email that we've forwarded to the commission.
The
and
other
I
ones
think
that we
with that, we
received
will.
are
Sorry, go
included
ahead.
in the staff report.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
All right.
So that is it for public comment. Thank you,
I'll
Chair.
go ahead and close public comment for now and bring it back to Commissioner for deliberation, questions, comments.
And before you begin your deliberations, I would note we would want to, staff would recommend the same change to the off-sale condition, item 15, to just delete anything that relates to affixed coolers as of 1998, since it's just not applicable.
And well, other commissioners decided if they want to have questions. I just wanted to also ask. So in the way, just the process from Sebastopol, and kind of taking on some of those comments, when someone comes, so if there's already an existing business there and they want to transfer that license, they can come, and that could be done at a staff level, right?
That is correct, because the presumption is that the locational aspects of the business and associated with the type of operations that are going on have been reviewed. And as long as the new owner complies with those, that they should be granted those same rights or privileges, I should say.
Okay.
It is, as Dr. Kelly noted, it is a conditional use permit.
Right. Okay. And if a business did not prior have off sale and they wanted to add that, then it would come to commission, or is that also?
It would come to the planning commission, correct?
Okay.
Yes, just like the punch down did and any other.
Right.
So the way and the way our code works for new types of license is that any alcohol, the first step is that any alcohol use permit requires planning commission approval. The code then makes exceptions for staff level review of certain types. One of those is restaurants without the off-sale privileges, other than what we just discussed earlier tonight in terms of the to-go stuff, as well as, I believe it's like lodge, like Masonic Lodge, club licenses. So it's fairly limited in terms of what we review at a staff level. Most everything else goes to the planning commission for review. So it's really, if you look at it as everything would come to the commission except for these two things.
Okay. And if someone comes, let's say a business comes for a brand new alcohol license that wasn't in business there before, then it's up to them to ask like, do we inquire, or I guess, I don't know, commission would inquire or staff would inquire, hey, do you also want off sale? Let's say they don't bring that up. Is that
So
something?
normally
Covered?
Thank you, Chair Fernandez. So normally we, in our application, we have a checklist that says, and I can pull it up. It simply asks the questions. Are you going to have a kitchen? Are you going to serve meals? Do you want to do off sale? It's right there in the questionnaire of what we ask every single applicant. So if they want to, all they need to do is check that box of, yes, I want to do off sale. It's really, I don't think that complicated, frankly.
Okay. All right. Yeah, just sure that was how that process was. Okay.
Yeah. They also, when they fill out a master application, describe their operations. And I understand they may just think, well, it's a restaurant with, however many seats, but like the specific criteria that we're allowed to issue licenses at a staff level are specifically asked each question of those criteria to make sure that they qualify for that. If they don't, we still accept the application. We just bring it to the planning commission.
Got it. Okay. All right. Thank you for clarifying that. Okay, so any other comments? Anybody want to make a motion at this point?
I have a clarification question.
Sure, go ahead.
So here you just said there's a checkoff list as to the intention. Did this restaurant business check off that they wanted off sale on their application?
Not in the original application.
Okay.
But obviously with their revised application is to add that to the restaurant.
Okay. So that was just done. I mean, they just applied for that separately, but not initially.
Correct.
Okay.
Do you have any other questions, Linda?
No, but I'm just, waiting to a little deliberation.
Got it. Okay. Before we do that, Kathy, I see you have your hand up. And you're muted. There.
We're in the portion of the meeting that is deliberation. Or are we still asking questions?
No, we're deliberation and or questions.
I was just going to say that I'm in support of the amended conditional use permit, but I am glad that we will be reviewing these as they come up for off sale, because we're kind of a unique small town that relies a lot on tourism, and a lot of people will be coming to town and enjoying a beer or a wine and wanting to take some home in their car or to another location in this beautiful part of West Sonoma County. But we also have people who live here in the community, and at some point, I don't know that the people who live here would really like all the restaurants to be so focused on alcohol. But I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So I'm grateful that item 4 is something that the Planning Commission has discretion over, so we continue to have these conversations for our community. I was also noticing that I know Canada has just said that alcohol at any rate is bad for one's health. And we know as older people, we're trying to limit how much we drink. And so when we look at the health and welfare of our communities, this may become an issue that has a lot of fact and information behind it. Those are just my comments, but I'm in support of this application and amended conditional use permit.
Yeah, so the deliberation, I also support this. I didn't really see any violations or anything that would prevent from adding this to it. So I would be in support of it, and if there's no other deliberation, or there still can be, I'll go ahead and make a motion for approval.
I'll
Chair
second.
Fritz, I mean,
Yes.
Chair Everett,
Yes.
sorry. I'm just trying to make sure. If this goes with the land, does that include the off sale, or is that something that continues to come back to the commission?
This goes with it, because that's what we're doing now to in general to other businesses.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I was absolutely clear that that goes with the property or the business.
Yeah, and I will say, if a future restaurant, so say in the future, the restaurant is sold to a different owner, they can always stop doing the off sale after a period of 12 months, then that off sale privilege, just like every other use permit, would go away.
Or if there's
Okay.
substantial change to the business, it's different.
Right, if they wanted to be just a bar, then that would be a completely different use
Yeah.
permit. It would need to come back to the commission.
Yeah.
And they'd have to find the parking for that too, because that's
Right.
another issue, but.
All right. So we have
So-
yeah, go ahead.
I saw a second by Vice Chair Fritz. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
Oh, that's fine. When you can, I seconded, we can continue to deliberate until we vote, so.
That's right. Okay, so we have first and second. Any other
I
deliberation
do
or
have
comment?
a couple comments.
Sure.
Ordinarily, I would be approving this to be consistent with what we've done and in the past. However, the owner violated the conditions of approval and didn't ask for this use ahead of time. The condition approval number 15, I believe, I'm not looking at it right. And so I think it's premature for us to approve this additional use, and I'd like to wait till the 1-year period.
And I think that the applicant did comment that they were not aware that they also needed the city's permission. Then when they were informed, they did stop that.
Well, it was part of the conditions of approval from the city, and that's who they came to get permission from, so.
It's a fair comment. Okay, any other comments? If not, we have first and second and call for the vote.
Sure, Commissioner Kelly,
No.
Commissioner Ottinger,
Yes.
Commissioner Burns,
Oh my gosh, Commissioner Kelly brings up a good point.
so Commissioner Burns, I think you just muted yourself accidentally.
Oh, sorry. I was ready to vote, and then Commissioner Kelly brought up a really good point. So now I'm just sitting here perplexed for a minute, just trying to think about what she had.
Would you like us to come back to you?
Yeah, come back to me. Commissioner Kelly, why did you
Okay.
do that at the very?
Because that's what deliberation is about.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll move on to Vice Chair Fritz
Aye.
and Chair Fernandez
Aye.
and Commissioner Burns. Do you have a vote?
Man, I think, can I
And
abstain?
just so you know, yes, you can abstain.
Okay, great.
Okay, thank you. So we have Three ayes, which the motion passes. The three ayes are Chair Fernandez, Vice Chair Fritz, and Commissioner Ottinger. One abstention, Commissioner Burns, and one nay, Commissioner Kelly. So this motion passes. This is also subject to the 7-day appeal period. So you cannot sell off sale until that appeal period is passed. So after next Tuesday. And we will let you know if it's appealed.
Okay. Right. All right. Thank you. And moving on, item 7, any subcommittee updates?
I'll just say that the Design Guidelines Subcommittee has been meeting to work on the objective design standards, and it's actually been kind of fun. And looking forward to getting a draft of those coming up shortly. And at what point does that come? Is that going to come to the commission for discussion and review, or is that just go to the design review board? Or
it will be coming. So the way, and I'm certainly open to any input from commissioners on this. So there's two parts to it. One is we were planning on. We have kind of an existing condition assessment chapter of the objective guidelines, which has been finalized. And so I believe we were planning on bringing that as an update likely in March, just because of the schedule of other items for the commission. And that would be a time, Vice Chair Fritz, to elaborate a little bit on what's going on with that. But yes, the objective design standards and the SB9, which is the single family lot split regulations, would both be coming to the design review board and the planning commission, and then on to the city council for approval. We did actually have a discussion about that today with in terms of how to do that, in terms of adopting the regulations. And the thought is the objective design guidelines, similar to our discretionary design guidelines, would be adopted by resolution. So they're not going to be in our zoning ordinance. They'll be just like our regular design guidelines, adopted by resolution. And that allows for more flexibility if there's minor tweaking and changes that need to be done to as we learn. The SB9 standards, which are single family lot splits, there will need to be some authorizing language added to the subdivision ordinance, similar to right now our zoning ordinance has a section that says the process for design guidelines, and that the design guidelines are adopted by a resolution by council. We'll need to put that into the subdivision ordinance. And so there's those would both be coming to the planning commission before going to city council. And if I may, Vice Chair Fritz, one other note on that subcommittee. Former Mayor Patrick Slater was on that committee. The new city council does not have any design, building, construction type experts, and they have decided and that group with the three folks they do have on it, which includes DRB members Christine Lovell and Lars Langberg, along with Paul, should just continue with those three. That group has been consulted with that and they're fine with that. So there's a slight change to that committee.
Thank you. And Paul, thank you for putting that work in. You're the right person for the job.
yeah, I'm enjoying it.
Okay, planning director's report.
Okay, I'm going to put John on the spot and have him talk a little bit about the electronic permitting.
Yeah, so
give an update on that.
Yeah, so the city started its kind of staff internal working for our electronic permitting, which started the first week of January, and we're working through things and finding little hiccups here and there, but so far it's going extremely well. We're able to enter new permits, and then also there's going to be some functionality for folks that if they want to check historic permits for a site or a location, they'll be able to do that through the public facing portal. So you can either enter an address or an APN, and you can kind of pull up the existing permits for that parcel, along with that. So that includes building permits, planning entitlements, code enforcement cases that caused police activity or anything of the matter. And we are looking at hopefully going live to the public portion of it fairly soon here. So that will be the city's new way of taking in permits rather than emailing in an application and going through that process there. So trying to streamline it as much as possible and make it as user friendly at the same time.
And just for the commission, if any of you are interested in doing some beta testing, particularly I'm thinking our design guideline committee members or the DRB board members may be good folks to give the link to you guys and have you kind of play around with it. They are in the process of updating with the last couple of years of permits. So for instance, the planning department has permits tracked back to the early 80s, at least, I think, if not 70s. Most of those are input. The last couple of years are not yet. They are in the process of doing that. And so part of it is that you would be able to search by address to find out if you won't be able to have access to the documents, the actual files yet, but you will have, hey, this address has a use permit and then a use permit amendment, like for instance, the Paella restaurant would have those, all 4 of those records associated with that site, or 5 going back to the original alcohol permit, so that you could actually see the history of the site. And so that's kind of fun. The other relation to that is, so we have submitted our housing element to the state for review and hopefully certification. They are certainly actively reviewing it because we've gotten a couple of comments or questions from them. Once that is completed, the sites that are on that inventory, we will be flagging in that system so that anyone who's interested can either search for them on a map or be able to, hey, this site is identified as a housing inventory site, in which case developing it as something not housing could potentially be more restrictive. And so that will be useful to staff, as well as potentially to potential developers who want to know. ABAG is also putting together a inventory bay wide of those sites as well. But this is kind of a local one where they'll also be able to find out more personal information. And so being able to communicate that more directly will, I think, be useful. We will also be putting all of the income deed restricted properties on there so that people know as well. One of the things that does happen to us is someone will not understand that they're in a deed restricted unit, go to sell it, and then only find out when they're in escrow or be reminded, and we'll get contacted by the title company that, hey, this is a deed restriction. And I've literally been asked, would you release it? And I was like, well, there's 20 more years of deed restriction on it. Why would I do that? Absolutely not. It will allow for, real estate agents and whatnot to identify that much more quickly and know when they're starting a listing and be able to contact the city with that information. So that's, it'll be good for the permitting part of it, but also kind of the record maintenance side of it from that side too.
And John, if I go in to look at property, we'll also have links to, say, county or state if it's appropriate for that property, or is that all the same information?
So it'll be subject to just parcels within city limits of Sebastopol. So it's within our own border. I know currently our GIS system that's sponsored through Santa Rosa. Well, it has the border for Sebastopol, and then you're also able to look in the outside city limits, and that notes if it's county or city jurisdiction. For the permitting software or public portal, it'll just be parcels located within city limits. So,
and those parcels, is there additional information that you would get from the county or the state within the city limits, or is all that information that you need just on there for the city?
yeah, all that information is on there. It does go far. It breaks down to what kind of zoning district it's in. I believe there's a couple other features, like if it's within the floodplain or if it's, in a, there's a couple other subcategories that we can list in those, if it's in the ESOS district, along the Laguna or something like that, which basically is, it's just copying over our GIS layers that we already currently have and then plugging it into the permitting software. So you're kind of seeing the same information. It's just more centralized in Sebastopol as opposed to the whole county area.
Yeah, good. I imagine that's going to free up probably normal questions that would come from the public that they can look up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a good portion of the calls that we get into the planning department are, for one, is this property located within Sebastopol? And then two, what kind of permits have already been approved on this site? So, or what's the permit history?
And how is information going to be disseminated to the public to let them know that this is available? Is that, I'm assuming, the usual?
Yeah, so that public portal will be on the planning department's website. I know we're going to eventually get a new website here pretty soon, hopefully, and that information will be on there as well. So it'll kind of be, submit a building permit application here button that you click, and then it brings you to the permit portal website. And you can also pay for the permit online through that portal there, as opposed to coming in, which you still can, but it gives you that option to pay, so if there's somebody out of city or out of state that's doing a project, they don't have to mail in a check and wait a couple extra days to get the permit process going. So.
All right, I'm going to give you a quick preview, which is, so here, this is actually the system right now, and you can go to search by parcel. And I'm going to make sure I'm in this partial list and just search by any address, type in the address. And it will give you the parcel number, some of the subdivision numbers. There's some, legacy unknown. That's it began in 2010, but it has, building square footage. Granted, all of this stuff is from the county assessor, so it's only as good as the information we have from the county assessor. Not always terribly accurate, but you do get a sense of, okay, here's the general plan land use, here's the lot size, here's the building was built, the zone is the community facilities, those types of things are available. Not everything is, but this is also where we would be able to have things like, if it's how many units there are, if there's an ADU, we can easily identify that there's 2 units or 3 units on the parcel, those types of things. So.
And if there's corrections that need to be made, is that something you have to go to the county assessor, or does that done directly?
Right. If they got your square footage right. So here's what we always tell anyone about county assessor data, which is if you go to the GIS site that John was mentioning, which is maintained by the city of Santa Rosa, that's also county data. It's going to have the exact same data in terms of size of site, size of number of bedrooms, all of that stuff is from the county assessor. The only thing that the county assessor is required to get right is two things: the value of your land and the value of your structures. Everything else they have is in service to that, and it's only, it's only as good as whatever. It is helpful for us, usually, especially with the unit, the residential units, to know, is this an illegal unit? Does it already have an ADU? Does it have, oh, this is multifamily, how many units are in it? That kind of a thing. But yes, if information is incorrect, you would need to go through the county assessor to correct it. There are times, I know, like when I worked in Marin County, where we as staff would see something and know that it's incorrect and let the county know. Usually that's in terms of number of units, though, or land uses or zoning or something, not how many bedrooms or bathrooms you have, because frankly, we don't know that as city staff.
Cool. Yeah, I'd be happy to beta test. Actually, I would have a pre-application application I'm working on right now.
Excellent.
Perfect.
That actually may be a good way. Actual application submittal. We are still, as John said, we're still working out tweaks. Just in terms of making sure the credit card online payment stuff working. There's still some things to tweak with that, and then not all the records are there, but it's between that and the housing element. John and I had a very full year last year, and these are pretty major January accomplishments for us. So.
Great.
Thank you, John, for that. And then you also have some facade improvement stuff coming up.
Yeah, so we have 2 facade improvements coming to the design review board for their February 1st meeting. We will have one more go around of the award things for March, I believe it is, and then that'll be it for the fiscal year of 22-23. We are anticipating to use all of the $20,000 that the that program gets from City Council. So it might be something. We're also tracking to see how many applications we get in through that year to see if it makes sense to potentially ask for additional funds, or at the mid-year budget review, or in the next fiscal year ask for a larger overall amount, because we see a trend that we're continuously exhausting that $20,000, so we want to offer it to more folks throughout the year, because by the second out of the fourth go around we have no more money left. So
Yeah, it'd be interesting to get at some point kind of a informational report on how that's done and how many properties and so forth, and that way it helps to be supportive of it, knowing that it's successful.
And the lovely thing is those applications will be in that permitting system, so it'll be very easy for us to run a list of those properties in the future, which is great, because it is. We've heard good things from the DRB in terms of the changes that council made, and it's a lot more user friendly now. And the relaunch folks have certainly been helping us advertise to businesses. And so, like when I arrived here, it was a staff level review, and we were maybe it was a $25,000 budget item, and only maybe $5,000 to $7,000 was being asked for each year. And I actually dropped it down to 20,000, because it was like, well, that's we're not using that much. And so it is nice to see we're at the point where we're kind of thinking about, oh, well, maybe we should request back up to 25,000, because that would be probably more appropriate at this point. So
Great.
Other items of interest, as I noted, the housing element has been submitted. I have also been in contact with Margaret from Sonoma County Legal Aid, and Chair Fernandez and I discussed having her come. It sounds like actually she'll be able to come to talk about tenant issues, I believe the first meeting in March. So that's kind of one of your upcoming more informational components. And sort of the kickoff of housing element implementation, actually. The city council upcoming are just like the past items. They did, as I noted, assign themselves to the various committees, the council committees that have council liaisons. They also approved a lease to install solar panels on and re-roof the Sebastopol Library. That's through an energy conservation agreement with Sizer Co. that was done a year or so ago. So that is moving forward. On next Tuesday's agenda, we have interviews for Design Review Board and the Climate Action Committee. So those appointments are coming up. We also have a renewal of the Sebastopol Little League lease. We did kind of myself and the city admin and the president of the Little League, Mark Sanchetti, did kind of an overall kind of redo to it. We did include a number of the items that the Planning Commission had discussed with Mark when he was here last fall, such as making sure the advertising for rental is at the ball fields, at on the city's website, on their website, that kind of thing, specifying the annual report to the Planning Commission. And then what they're mostly asking for is a 25-year lease. I think, twofold. One is they are going to be doing a significant fundraising this next year to raise probably about $100,000 to replace the lights with LED lights. And those will be, usually those are, they're brighter, but they have a sharper focus that they bleed off of the fields less. And they have like a 25-year warranty on them. And so they've asked for a 25-year lease. That can be, there's a deed restriction that it'd be a park anyway. And obviously the council has just adopted the master plan for the creek naturalization that leaves the fields intact. I suspect that made them a little nervous as well when that happened last year. So that is going to be going to council next Tuesday. And then we also next Tuesday have a report from the Public Art Committee and recommendation for their new art site. I think I shared that at your last commission meeting, but that will be formally going to council next Tuesday. And then I did, in terms of the Ned Kahn art piece, which is pending, I've been talking with Ned, and he's finishing up a major commission for Google down in Sunnyvale, and then he will be fabricating the Sebastopol Spire. And now that the engineering work is completed for that, and hopefully likely installing early this summer. So that is also on its way. So a number of things playing out. So that's next Tuesday. Sorry. I'm getting confused because there's a 5th Tuesday this month. Next Tuesday, there's actually a special city council meeting to talk about the fire department potential consolidation versus keeping it as is. And so that is next Tuesday. I believe that's at 6 o'clock. The agenda items I just described are the February 7th, the first February city council meeting. Apologies. And I think that's all I have to report this week.
Any updates on the meetings, hybrid? Are we still going to continue?
Oh, yes. So city council will also be discussing that on this February 7th. Thank you. So they will be discussing that, whether to do, so the governor's order and state of emergency for COVID and telecommuting meetings ends end of February. So your February meetings will be via Zoom. They do need to start to be either in person or in person and hybrid, in person Zoom. John and I and city admin were at the community center this morning to talk with them about that. Most likely, well, your meetings will go back to the youth annex room where they used to be. And so they need to be in person somewhat. But council will be discussing whether to do the hybrid or in person only February 7th. So if you have any input you want, I will be at that meeting. If you have any input you'd like to send through me or separately, but if you'd like to send it through me, I'm happy to take your input now.
So is the hybrid would be the commissioners have to be in person and the public can be remote? Is that
The public and consultants and things like that, or applicants could be. The state has two different types of Brown Act / telecommute rules that would apply to the commission. One is there's a sort of a traditional set of Brown Act rules, and I'm actually I just went through this as part of the board that I'm on for the Community Development Commission, and there's two sets. One is the Brown Act. Traditional rules do allow you to do remote, but if you do that, you need to announce where the location is. You need to have telecommute ability from that location. It needs to be ADA accessible, and you need to post the agenda there, and that needs to be posted as basically a satellite location. That's the traditional Brown Act rules that we have not been utilizing during COVID. The state recently changed the regulations so that you can, under certain circumstances, telecommute in as a commissioner. However, it is limited to a certain percentage or number of meetings per year. I believe it's, and I'm not going to say what it is. I will get that information to you so that you can see that. You do have to have a bona fide reason for doing that. So and those are listed out in the state regulations, but like if you have been exposed to COVID or you have COVID, or there's definitely some regulations, and so that will be something that we as staff will need to track. So we'll just put together a simple spreadsheet in terms of commissioners' attendance in person versus remote, and general classification of why, so to make sure that we're all adhering to those regulations.
And does it allow for if someone is out of the area, a commissioner's out of the area, or does that have to be more about health issues?
I want to say it's more about health, in which case, because I know that's been actually very convenient for this commission to be able to attend and whatnot when they're out of town. You can obviously still be absent from a meeting as long as we have a quorum, but it is, I'm not sure if travel is a reason or if there are circumstances where you can do that. I know under the traditional Brown Act, I believe that was allowed. You, like I said, you just need to post the location of where you were doing it from. And so for the board I'm on, it's maybe more makes sense because I can post Sebastopol City Hall as a location and do the meeting from there. It's already ADA accessible in a public place, so it's pretty easy to do. But that is, it does make it more complicated for the staff level, so I won't be doing that for them because they don't have the same hybrid setup. But we are looking at it as the hybrid setup. I think would be pretty smooth from what we saw today. So. And then I think the other thing that the council would want to discuss if they do hybrid is what the sort of, the order of how you call on people and how you do things. And, do you call on the in-person first and then the hybrid, or do you, how do you do that as staff, and a commission, how do we facilitate those things? The one thing I have heard from the city clerk is that I believe the council may have already expressed that they want everything to be the same so that the public doesn't have to try to figure out, oh wait, this one's remote, this one I can do hybrid, this one I have to go there for, and kind of go back and forth. So they certainly want some consistency there. So, and
of course that all depends on getting the technology in place to be able to do that, right?
Right. And we did, like I said, we did meet with the community center this morning where we've had our past meetings, and they do have the technology available to do it. Basically, the people in the room are, so what would happen is the people in the room, you'd have the same microphones that you used to have at the dais. plugged in instead of using anything on a screen. And instead of the Zoom screen you're looking at now, it would be projected onto, I mean, you could bring a computer or something, but it would also be projected. So you would be onto a screen. So you would be able to see not only the presentations, but any other Zoom callers or members in attendance. So it's kind of like the room is one square of the Zoom screen.
Okay. And what about material? Is that something that we can continue to get electronically, or does that need to be printed if we're meeting in person?
So that is up to the commission. And that can be individual commission. I mean, certainly we have saved a lot of money for the city and a lot of sustainable, a lot of trees, frankly, by not printing out things. And I think one of the things that we can discuss probably after council has made their determination is it something where people would want to bring their own laptop or have something provided, probably a tablet, so that they could still see something at their dais seat. I think certainly with 5 commissioners, it's a lot easier to handle than with 8. So that's, but yeah, I can certainly agendize that for the commission meeting after the council discussion, if that probably makes sense, so we can make sure that everyone here has a chance to provide input and discuss as needed. Yeah,
I have to say it was a little bit awkward to go from the paper to the electronic, but now I've gotten used to it. It's convenient.
Right. And I've gotten used to it, but only with the second screen, so that I can have you guys on one screen and my material on another. Yeah. So that'll be a little bit.
2 screens here as well. Yeah.
So yes, it will definitely be a change for all of us, and I don't think it'll be going back to the same as it was before. I mean, just in terms of we have 2 years of plus of experience of doing things differently.
Carrie, Linda Kelly here.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you send us the links to what you think the state exception rule is going to be, or how the whole program, where the heck it is?
I can do that, and what I can do now is this, like I said, the Sonoma County Community Development Commission we already had this discussion at our last meeting, and they're actually, I mean, it was less of a discussion, more about we have to go back to the in-person meetings. The problem comes with the in-person meetings is if someone does need to be remote for one of those reasons, then you got to figure out the hybrid stuff. So I think they need to figure out the hybrid stuff. They're just not quite there yet. But they did give us in our packet, a chart that outlines those regulations. So I'm happy to send that on, and I'm sure the county has more eyes on that kind of stuff than we do. So I'm happy to send, it'll be from them, but I'll send that on, and it's a pretty easy to read kind of little chart kind of a thing.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I will get that up.
Okay. Any other information or questions for Carrie?
Oh, one more piece of information. Yeah. I did forward an email. Vice Mayor Rich had asked me to and sent to me there. The Gen H is having a workshop, I guess, on February 2nd on Housing 101. Some of it you may have heard from other folks, like Jane Riley is going to be there. So, but that is. I also heard from Gen H that they would be happy to have the commissioners there if you'd like to attend. So please just RSVP directly to them. But just as a reminder that I sent that out earlier today.
Okay. And if we are there, be given directions as to how to conduct ourselves, so it's not. So
as long as you're not talking about decisions that come before this commission, you're fine. And I mean, I'm sure it's being put on specifically for newly elected officials or newly appointed officials. So I'm sure they will be, I would hope that they would be cognizant of that. But it's when you go to a conference, you are allowed to have more than a quorum. So if there's no limit on who can attend, you should refrain from discussing any like particular sites in Sebastopol or particular policies you want to implement, but you're free to ask questions about how things work and, treat it as an informational workshop, which is what it is.
So I signed up and I've gone to some of their, watched some of their webinars and some of their things before, and they're usually pretty good. So.
Yeah, they have a good panel. They have Ben Wickham from Burbank, who used to be with the CDC, and Jane Riley, and it looks like they have a good panel.
Good.
I have a question about, are they a nonprofit organization or sponsored by the county or?
They are a nonprofit.
They are a nonprofit, not a for-profit.
Correct.
I believe so, yeah.
They're a nonprofit. They get a lot of funding from the community foundation. But they're not a county agency or anything. They're independent.
Correct. They're a nonprofit.
Okay.
And in fact, at the bottom of there says they are a project of Tides Center, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. So.
Okay.
Okay, that's it. Okay.
That is it. Thank you so much. And I apologize. Your next meeting will be on Valentine's Day.
Yep. So plan ahead.
Hey,
All right.
Carrie, were you I'm sorry.
What was that?
I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, okay.
No, go ahead, Linda.
I was just wondering, were you asking us for our input around hybrid, non-hybrid, or we did a survey. I think I've been surveyed twice now, but I don't know if that's current enough for them. You said you wouldn't mind transferring that over. I didn't know if,
Yeah, I mean, I have the general consensus from this group because I certainly have asked this group a few times when they had options of how they wanted to do things. And so I think I've been pretty consistent with the messaging to them. But I know at that point it was less about in-person or hybrid or whether to stay remote or not. And when they discussed whether to stay remote or not, as long as they could, as long as the governor allowed it, they also heard from a number of the member public, some of who were on the meeting tonight, about how much easier it was for parents and others to have more transparent government by having the hybrid, or by having the Zoom, I should say.
Or it sounds like also, for the public, but for commissioners as well, So be interested to hear. I hadn't really realized about the Brown Act stuff, so that was good information. Thank you.
You're welcome. Absolutely. Yeah, and there will be more. I will certainly agendize that on the next agenda so that everyone can be prepared.
All right. Well, thank you, commissioners, and Carrie and John, thank you as always for your good work.
No, thank you all. We're a busy night tonight, so thank you.
Thank you so much.
Adjourn this meeting.
Thank you. Bye.
The recording has stopped.